Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a brother that I've had the pleasure of knowing for well over a decade now. He is my brother in Christ. He's my neighbor. He's my friend. We both serve as deacons at our church. He's a father. He's a grandfather, a husband. This brother is just a man of God who has a heart of gold, a ton of wisdom, just a great brother all around to know. I have great respect and admiration for him. And he's taking some time out of his very busy schedule to hang out with us for a little while to share a little bit about his journey, his story, with the hopes of encouraging and inspiring others, particularly as it associates with dealing with adversities and the challenges of life, just kind of dropping us some wisdom and some nuggets that he's been able to experience over his many years. And I'm so glad to have him aboard to share with us his journey, his story. And so with that said, it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you my dear friend, Mr. Ray Rogers. Ray, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, my brother, before we get started with the show, I do want to give you an opportunity to give our audience a general introduction of yourself, you know, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give them a taste of who is Ray Rogers.
Okay. Well, my name is, I always introduce myself now as Ray Charles Rogers because when I say Ray Rogers, people hear Roy. And believe me, I've heard enough Roy Rogers and trigger jokes over the years. For the young folks, they don't even know who those people are, you know. But
Right.
Joseph, you might remember, you know. But again, I'm Ray Charles Rogers. I grew up down in East Texas, a little town called Palestine, Texas. I am retired military. You know, I came of age during the Vietnam era. So I joined the Navy right out of high school, really to avoid going to Vietnam. I didn't mind serving, but I wanted to do it on my terms. That's what I decided to do. But through the military, as the Lord blessed, I had a lot of opportunities and went into the submarine force, became a naval officer, spent 31 years, and then I retired from the Navy. I joined Lockheed Martin Corporation as a project and program manager. I spent 14 years with them. So, and since my retirement from Lockheed Martin, I've done various things. I've been an insurance claims adjuster. I even tried to be a day trader for a minute or two. You know, that was kind of fun, but I lost some money, as we often do when we try stuff like that. You know, and now I am pursuing a small business, pursuing government contracts, which I'll get into a little bit later. That's who I am. I have three adult children, 9 grandchildren, and 3 great grands. So my crew is growing.
That is beautiful, man. And if you would, of course, everybody doesn't know, of course, you are married. How long you have been married?
I have to think about it because my wife reminds me to how many years we've been married. We've been married, I think, 54 years. You know, I was fortunate enough to meet a young lady in high school that really enchanted me. And I don't know if I enchanted her, but she knew I was a hard worker. So when I asked her to sneak off and get married before I left going to boot camp, she agreed to do that. So we sneaked off 4 days before I left going to boot camp, got married. Now I escaped to boot camp, and she took the heat once people knew what had happened. But we have been able to bond together and fight the devil and stay close and tight and raise our families in a major way. So it's been a good relationship. You know, but as anybody would say, marriage is it's a daily job. You got to work at it, and we've learned to do that and keep respecting each other and loving each other. So it's been a long journey. Yeah,
that is awesome, man. And I wanted to make sure we drop that nugget out there about marriage. And once I get a chance to get Gloria to not be camera shy, we definitely got to have you both on here to just talk about that subject, because the idea of a marriage lasting 54 years. I mean, you've been married as long as I've been alive, and you know, I mean, but that's just a beautiful thing, and you just don't see it anymore. So
Right.
again, that's another topic for another day. If we, like I said, we can get you both on at a later time, I would love to
Mm-hmm.
have that conversation because again, so much to celebrate and acknowledge.
Sure.
Just God's covering over your lives and your ability to endure all of
Mm-hmm.
those years throughout all of the challenges, the good times, the bad times, and everything else that
Right.
goes with it.
Right.
So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So with that said, man, we're gonna jump into our segments for this evening, learn a
Okay.
little bit more about your journey, your story. So,
Mm-hmm.
as with any story, and this is kind of a common thing for me when I talk to my guests. I'm a firm believer that when we reflect back on our journeys, our stories of life, we would be remiss if we did not take the opportunity to spend a little time going back to the very beginnings of it all. Where it all
Mm-hmm.
starts, because I definitely believe that even though in those beginning moments we may not recognize or understand why certain things play out the way that they do, you oftentimes find out later in life, oh, now I got a connection between what was happening early on to where I am now, walking in my purpose, how life has turned out for me, how the
Mm-hmm.
direction that God has led me down. And so
Right. Right.
with that said, I want to kind of go back to that moment with you, and if you would share with us, what was it like for you growing up? Fond memories that you have about growing up, as well as if there's any
Mm.
challenges that come to mind that you'd like to share as well, to kind of give us a foundational basis of where your story begins.
Okay. Well, there are some fond memories and some challenges. As with many folks of my generation, I found myself. Well, my mom. Well, my let me go back. My mom got married at an early age, like I did. My dad was in the Air Force. I think my mom was 18 when she got married, and after four young children, she found herself divorced and trying to handle things on her own. So I really don't recall spending much time with my dad as a young child because being in the Air Force, they were living in San Antonio, but he was getting deployed to different places. He'd come back, periodically. They were having babies, of course, but I don't recall him at all. I really recall meeting my dad really as an adult.
Hmm.
So at the age of 6, I went to live with my grandparents because my mom had 3 other young children she was raising. She was working hard to take care of them. So me going to live with my grandparents kind of took the load off of her to a certain extent. By that time, my uncle had left the home and joined the military. So when I went to live with my grandparents, I became their helper. They became my legal guardians and went on from there. So I kind of was raised as an only child for really until I left going to the military. Even though I hung out with my other siblings and so forth, but not that frequently initially. But through my grandparents, they loved me and took care of me. They taught me how to work because my grandfather was kind of a jackleg, uh, business guy. He carried field hands down to the big farms in the country back in those days. As a young kid, in the summers, when the truck left the house, I was the first field hand on that truck,
Hmm.
going to the country to work in working cotton fields, pea fields, hay fields, watermelon fields, you name it. I did it as a youngster. But I learned how to work. I learned how to earn money. I had to share what I earned with my grandmother. That was part of the deal. But it was all good. So that was an interesting time. And I did that until I was old enough to get my own job. I even at the age of maybe 11 or 12, I started a lawn business where on Saturday I would go out and mow yards. And I don't recall anybody else being in the white community back in those days except for me, running around with my lawnmower, cutting people's yards. But I made decent money doing that on the weekends and doing field work, during the week. So it wasn't glamorous. It was hot, but we had fun with the other kids who were also doing that. And again, I learned some valuable lessons about getting it done, working and taking care of yourself. So, yeah. But the other thing that went on as a child, though, as a young child, I was a shy kid, and being with my grandparents pretty much as an only child, the shyness made for some lonely times until I got old enough to get involved with sports. And with sports came with more friends and so forth, and then I got to be a little bit better. But yeah, the shyness was an issue, I also had a stuttering problem, and the shyness and the stuttering was a challenge to a certain extent. But I had to really work through that over a period of time, over a number of years, is really. So that's pretty much how it was as a youngster.
Okay. Okay. Well,
Mm-hmm.
first off, I appreciate you your transparency and sharing that. I think what
Mm-hmm.
stands out to me, of course, is the fact that as you stated, at a very young age, the message of, or the lesson, if you will, of being a hard worker was
Mm-hmm.
instilled in you. And it's, when I think about what you do now, all the things that you've done in life, and along those years, again, this is why it's so critical that we look back at the beginnings of it all, because I don't think it would be much more difficult for you to have been able to accomplish the things that you've been able to accomplish in your adult life had you not started off understanding the importance of being a hard worker, of being accountable for yourself, learning how to earn a buck, and not being, feeling sort of entitled, if you will, but being willing to get out there and grind and do your thing. I mean, it's like, when I think about even in my era growing up, it was more likely to see young kids get out and do things like,
Right.
mow grass and shovel snow
Mm-hmm.
for money and things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
then when you fast forward to our young people of today, the idea of that,
They don't want to
they're
do
just
anything like that.
they don't
Yeah.
want to do anything like that. But we would make those kind of sacrifices, like I said, to make a little money here and there,
Right.
picking up a
Right.
little odd and end jobs or whatever, until we were able to legally, work
Mm-hmm.
somewhere for somebody. But we kids at a young age kind of built that work ethic up. So to me, that was sort of the beginnings, if you will, of understanding what that looked like. And then, you know, and again, you talked about the challenge of, dealing with being that only child. I grew up as an only child, but of course,
Mm-hmm.
there's perks to it, and then there's sometimes, like you stated, there's those lonely moments. And
Right. Right.
if you're kind of shy, like I know I was shy early on, kind of
Mm-hmm.
introvert, it can be kind of hard to find that niche. But the
Right.
good thing
Right.
about it is, for those who might be tuning in and had that same experience about once being introverted, once you kind of get connected to something, whether it's, in your case it was athletics, or some
Mm-hmm.
other interest that you have, a lot of times you kind of find that groove, you find that niche of comfort. You begin to make new friends, and your personality begins to come out. For me, my turning point didn't really happen until college. Where
Right. Right.
I literally remember, and I've shared this story before.
Mm-hmm.
My mom and other friends dropping me off at school, and I'm walking around on campus, and I remember looking around, and I just talking to myself, and I was like, and I made a promise. I said, from this point forward, the days of being, shy and timid, and not trying new things and
Mm-hmm.
exciting things, it stops today. If there's something that's
Right.
of interest to
Right.
me, I'm gonna try it and just see what happens, and
Right.
basically
Right.
be fearless in it. And that was a huge turning point for me. And before I knew it, man, the person that you see today is nothing like who I
Right.
was.
Right.
I was just real quiet. No, I don't want to try this. Worried about what people think.
You had to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, get
Yeah.
out of my comfort zone. And
Mm-hmm.
you see me in my moments and in my zones. I would have never been able to do any of those things, standing in front of people,
Mm-hmm.
talking and doing none of that kind of stuff. That would have been nowhere on my agenda. But that's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
how God works. I think over time, He kind of, as you mature, as you grow, in age and wisdom and everything, He sets you up and puts you in position to be able to kind of
Right.
explore and
Right.
find yourself, which by default, if you're in relationship with Him, also allows you an opportunity to begin to tap into, His purpose for your life, His gifts that He has in you. And it's just it's a
Right.
building process. And so
Yeah.
that's been clearly it's manifested itself into you. I've had
Yeah.
similar experiences in my path as well. So the journey is worth it. You just have to be willing to
Yeah.
be open, and then embracing the fact that, yeah, I got some strengths and I got some weaknesses, but that's okay. It's who I
Right.
am, and
Right.
I can work through that.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
appreciate you
let me,
sharing
let me
that.
make let me make one comment about that, because I was just thinking about this. In high school, I realized that even though I was a shy kid, um, I was also a survivor.
Hmm.
So when I formed my group of friends that we used to hang out with and do stupid things, as young folks do. As it turns out, I was always the one that tried to stay sober,
Mm.
always watch our backs to make sure we got home safe. I was a proverbial Boy Scout in that regards, because one thing, I don't know what brought this on, but I never wanted to have someone else responsible for me.
Mm.
I want to make sure that if anything's going to happen, I was going to know what was going on and have a chance to survive. But in so doing, my goal was to help others also
Mm-hmm.
survive and make it home. So that I think that attribute kind of followed me on into my military career. So that's just an interesting thing there.
Yeah, I could definitely see the
Hmm.
connection in that respect. I
Right,
think again from
right.
our era, when I think about my mom growing up,
Hmm.
and stories that she shared with me, and then I even in my life, coming up. I mean, that was one thing that I can, that's near the top of my list of things that, when I think about what my mom taught me was how to
Hmm.
survive.
Right,
Like how to,
right,
how do you survive when you don't have a lot to work with, whether it's
right.
finances, whether it's resources, whether it's people in your corner. Like how do
That's
you survive?
that's a
How do
very
you
good
make
point.
it?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, um, and so she did an excellent job at that. And so,
Hmm.
whether I have a whole lot to work with or I have very little to work with, my worry about if I'm going to be okay, I don't really
Hmm.
worry about that as much as maybe somebody else who didn't have that type of upbringing. And again, it makes me go back to what I shared earlier about how when you think about today's young people, and you and I have even had
Hmm.
conversations about this, like
Yeah, right.
we worry about our kids, or in your case, your grandkids of the day, like are
Hmm.
they going do they really understand like what it means to be able to survive out here? Because we've worked hard to provide a life for them that they kind of take for granted, that they think it just magically happens. The neighborhood that we
Hmm.
live in, the lifestyles that they have, the accesses to things that they have, that we didn't have that coming up. And
Hmm. Hmm.
but they've never had to like rely upon doing it on their own. Like what would they do if they had to make it on their own? Would they lose it? Would
Right,
they be able to,
right, right.
again, would they be able to survive? And so,
Yeah.
I think having, people in your life that like yourself as a father, as a grandfather, as a great grandfather, being able to instill that
Hmm.
mindset in them, as I know you try to do, even with the business venture that you're doing right now. And you and I have
Right.
talked about that. You're doing it in part because of it's something that you enjoy doing, but you're also thinking, I'm trying to set them up to have
Absolutely.
something that they
That's what
can
it's all about. Yeah.
hold to and
Hmm.
benefit from for the years, when I'm, not able to move about like I'm able to do now, or when I'm just simply gone home to be with the Lord, that I
Right,
left them
right.
something that they can build on.
Hmm.
So those are all beautiful characteristics. And again, but I still, it all goes back to that worth
Yeah.
ethic that was
Right.
instilled in you right from the get-go.
Hmm.
And as you said, it's benefited you and carried with you along through life. That combined with
Hmm.
your faith walk and your relationship with God, those two, marrying the two together, it's been a reflection of what your whole story and your journey has been about. And
Yeah.
as of course you're going to share more of that as we continue talking, it's important for people to understand the dynamics of that and the importance of
Hmm.
it, in
Right.
our respective
Right.
lives. So good stuff, man.
Right.
So
Right.
as you know, Ray, we go through our childhood, we have our initial experiences and things like that. And, we can't wait till we get grown. But of course, as becoming adults, what comes with that is more challenges, more things that we have to be responsible for and learn about. But in the midst of all of that, you live long enough, there's going to be moments in
Hmm.
time where these storms, these life storms, these valley experiences are going to come your way. And
Hmm.
every now and then, even in the midst of those storms that come along your way, storms hit everybody. But every now and
Hmm.
then we get hit with some that they're a little bit more intense. They're a little bit
Hmm.
more heavier than the normal stuff. So much so where we might even start to have doubts and worries and fears and anxiety, like, how am I supposed to get through this? This is way more than what I'm, even as a person who grew up being learning how to survive and navigate. Even sometimes,
Hmm.
even for those of us who are good at it, we get hit with some stuff every now and then that kind of knocks us off our feet, that kind of makes us question whether we
Right.
can overcome
Right.
that challenge. And so, with that
Hmm.
said, if you would, Share with us a
hmm
time that you felt just like that, even with all
hmm
your ability to work hard and navigate through and and dodge and buck and weave, if you will, through some challenges.
hmm
Tell us about a time when you weren't sure when how you were going to be able to overcome that situation. Of course, you're here today to speak on it, so we can trust that God
Right,
led you
right.
through it. But maybe at that time you weren't so sure.
Yeah.
Kind of walk it through
Okay.
with
All
us
right.
what that situation was like, and what was the turning point where you kind of saw
So,
a little light at the end of the tunnel.
yeah. So I'll give two stories. Okay. The
Okay.
first of which is when I first joined the military. Again, I mentioned that my wife and I, my girlfriend and I, sneaked off and got married before I left going to boot camp. So, and of course, she got pregnant pretty quickly. So then the challenge was, okay, I've got a young wife. I'm not making any money. I got a child on the way. How do I survive this challenge? Well, as it turned out, as a senior in high school, all the senior boys had to take the military entrance exam called the ASVAB. So I did pretty well on my exam. So when I went to the recruiting office to check into what I wanted to do, they asked me, "Well, we have this program that if you can survive it, you'll be fast tracked as far as getting promoted and get some good training and so forth." And it was a nuclear power training program. Now, this may have been the start of the affirmative action program in the Navy. I'm not sure. But what it did was it gave me an opportunity to compete for that program. I had to go to boot camp first, go to a technical school. And if I passed the tech school, then I would get into this really comprehensive training program to learn how to do nuclear engineering in a propulsion plant for a, a Navy ship. Okay, so I said, sign me up. I did not know how hard it would be because as a senior in high school, when I should have been taking, physics and calculus, I was a jock, man. I took the easiest things I could. I made straight A's, did no work, chased my girlfriend around the place, just had a good old time. And as it turns out, I got through boot camp, got to the technical school, went to the nuclear power training, the first phase of that. And they gave us an exam, first day or so. And it blew me out of the water. It was filled with, high level math, science, and so forth. I said, oh my God, I'm over my skis. How am I going to survive this? So this is my first inkling of learning how to pray and knowing how prayer can help you overcome stressful situations. I began to pray. Okay. Now there were other guys in my same situation. And another thing, I was the only person of color in my class. Now, as it turns out, back in those days, if you were the only one, then the other guys were willing to help you. If there had been more than two or three of us, probably would have been a whole different situation, you know. But I gained some friends. We worked together. We were all in the same boat. We learned how to study. And once we learned how to study, then it became a little bit easier. Because by this time, my then wife had the baby, and she's going to be coming out to join me in California. And I could not be on what they call stupid study or mandatory night study when she came out, right? So I worked hard, began to pass those exams, and survived that. Went on to get past. It was a whole year of intensive training. Got through all that stuff. Went to my first submarine as an enlisted guy. I made a couple of different ranks during that time frame, so that it became easier to take care of my wife and my baby. So, but as my first time really focusing in on how do I pray, and will prayer help me with this stuff? And I think it did, because I had no idea how I would survive that environment, being the only brother in this school, not knowing what I was doing, but it all came together. It fell in place. Now, because of that, I went to my first submarine, and after, let's say, 3 patrols, I was offered a chance to compete for a Navy scholarship program, during which, if I passed that, I would go to college, get my degree, and become an officer. So the second challenge was I got that. I wanted opportunity. Went to Southern University. I was going to school full time while I was in the military. I graduated, got my commission, and I went back to submarine as a submarine officer. Now, this was in the 70s, and there was a slew of black officers coming into the submarine force in this time frame, and that was not met with open and welcome arms. There was a lot of folks that did not want to see black folks in the submarine force. It almost seemed like that was the last bastion of, I hate to say it like this, but supremacy, if you will, where the other folks, I'll say the white boys, want to keep that for themselves, because if they could survive that, they could do very, very well, and they move up through the ranks pretty quickly. They didn't want us to have that opportunity. So the challenge was coming out of Southern University, an all black, HBCU, going back to the submarine force, into that environment. That was challenging because everything that was being done by my commanding officer and other senior officers on the ship was to put roadblocks in my way and other guys' way, like me, trying to make sure that we fail as opposed to survive.
Yeah.
Again, I learned how to pray about that, and every challenge that came my way, even though it was difficult, I found a way to pray about it. And every time I prayed about things worked out. I survived. I got qualified. On the sub, passed all my qualifications and so forth, and went on to bigger and better things. So that was those 2 challenges really began to initiate me into the power of prayer. And if you really believe in prayer, how it can help you survive some really sticky situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Again, man, I appreciate you sharing that, and just making the connection between what you were going through and how prayer impacted it, because I think that's how God moves when he realizes that you're in your early stages of kind of understanding who he is, what he represents, the power of what the relationship is with him. He has to allow for a storm to come your way that you can't just automatically, kind of, navigate your way through it on your own strength, on your own merit.
Right.
Like you said,
right.
Your first half of the story is you get an opportunity to be in a program where there's not anybody that looks like you in the program, and it has a rigorous coursework that you weren't supposed to make it. I mean, when you think about it, as you said, I'm
Right.
taking all the basic classes. I'm doing good. I'm getting good grades, but I'm getting good grades in easy courses, not
Yeah.
studying anything that's in alignment with what I just signed up for. But yet, here you were in this program, the only one of you in it. When I say, a brother of color in that program,
Right.
but then God navigated a way instead of. And we're talking about a time at that point when you get in that program, you're late 60s, early
Yeah, it's
70s
early
time
70s.
frame,
Yeah.
where it's still, like you said, it's still a
Pretty
little
rough.
tense,
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
in terms of acceptance of us in those type of roles or whatever. So you could have very easily been in the class and the class been against you, looking for ways to to knock you out. It's funny when you told the story, and I'm sure you've seen the movie. It makes me think of Men of Honor. With Cuba
Right.
Gooding playing Carl Bashir and being in the
Yeah.
Navy, and
Right.
how he
Right.
went through the challenges and what that was like. He had some people that was on his side, but most of them didn't want to see him do well. So it's kind of like here you are in a similar situation, trying to get into a place where you don't dominate in there, but yet God makes a pathway for you to be successful, and all it required was for you to engage with him in conversation through prayer. to say, you know
Yeah.
what, this is bigger than me, this is greater than me. I don't
Hmm.
have the skill sets right now to properly, pass this course, but I'm just trusting in you that you will open my mind up to learn this
Yeah.
information in an expedited manner, and that you will at least connect me with a couple of people that'll offer some support and some encouragement. And he did that,
Hmm.
but then he didn't stop there. He showed you, kind of gave you a taste of what it looks like when you pray and you trust him. But he said, okay,
Hmm.
Ray, well, we getting ready to go to another level now, because if you thought this was a challenging task, wait till you start getting
It's a
some
real
education
rank.
under your
Yeah.
belt, some real
Yeah.
rank.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
really not going to be feeling you now. You and
Hmm.
some other brothers that look like you, they're not going to be really feeling you. What you going to do then? Are you going to go into that
Yeah.
situation and give up? Are you going to say, it's not worth me fighting through this? Or are you going to come back to me and stay in
Hmm.
prayer with me and stay connected with me? And that's what you did. And so, again, these were two pivotal, incidents in life that I look at those situations. You could tell me if I'm thinking incorrectly about this, but clearly these were two pivotal moments that not
Yeah.
only made a big impact on you in terms of career, but it set the tone for how you were going to be able to support your family, be a father, be
Hmm.
a husband,
Hmm.
all of those things. It was all
Oh yeah.
intertwined and
Right. Right.
connected. And again, I can't help but to go back to the fact of where your foundational roots started with
Right.
was the work
Right.
ethic. I
Yeah.
worked hard. I faced that challenge head on, but this time, instead of me trying to do it on my own strength, I said, God, you got to be a part of this, because I
Right.
can't do it
Right.
on my own. As tough as I
Yeah.
think I am, as strong
Yeah.
and determined as I think I am, I need you. I need a divine presence, a divine intervention in this for me to navigate through this. And
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
showed you just what he could do to make sure that you were
Right. Right.
successful
You know,
in that endeavor.
yeah, I might add that when I went back to the submarine as an officer, I've been on sub as an enlisted guy, so I
Hmm.
had that exposure to that environment. So I think when I went back to the sub as an officer, because I had been enlisted in that same environment, that gave me some credibility.
Hmm.
But the challenge was that on that very same submarine, before I got there, there had been another black guy there as an officer who had failed. They had forced him out. I don't know how they did it, but they forced him out. They disqualified him from submarine service. And when I got there, I kind of heard some of the talk about that. I said, "Oh, this is real pressure." Now, you kind of might imagine coming from an HBCU after 4 years in the '70s. That was a little raw. So I
Hmm.
had to be very careful how I pointed myself with the other officers in the wardroom and the my commanding officer and so forth. And they would say things to me to kind of gauge my reaction. But I had learned to again pray about things and think and take a moment before I responded to something that I thought was a provocation. And that kind of that really worked out well for me to enable me to get my feet under myself and get comfortable in that environment and survive. So again, but it really came back to what you said. The work ethic, they saw that. I didn't mind working hard. Um, I got along with folks fairly well, but privately, I prayed a lot. I prayed a lot because I couldn't tell my wife about this stuff because she wouldn't understand.
Hmm.
Now I could talk to other brothers that was going through the same thing I was going through. We would share information. That's what another thing that helped me. Other black officers doing in the submarine force that we knew each other and we would kind of compare notes and so forth. That helped a lot. But the biggest basic thing was prayer. Prayer sustained me.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that you pointed out about how um through your prayer, and this
Hmm.
again, this goes back to why it's important to pray, why it's important to have a relationship with God, is that one of the things that he teaches you is how to basically how to be discerning, how to be a good listener, how to exercise patience.
Mm.
Not a, it you because you spoke about how you had to be careful about not allowing yourself to be provoked. Because I'm sure in that situation you
Right.
probably had,
Oh yeah. I had a
white
few issues.
officers
I had a
who
few
would
issues
say
with that.
something
Yeah.
say something to you,
Mm-hmm.
be a certain way towards you, trying to trigger a reaction. And
Mm-hmm.
so you have to say, am I going to respond in a worldly way? Am I going to
Mm-hmm.
allow my emotions to get the best of me and I go off? I do something, I say something maybe to a commanding officer. I would put hands on somebody, lay hands
Right.
in a way that's not
Right.
holy,
Right.
and get myself, quote unquote, disqualified, get myself in some trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or do I receive what they have to say? Not because I'm punking out, not because I'm
Mm-hmm.
but I'm acknowledging I'm acknowledging the fact that this is just an ignorance moment that's approaching me. But I gotta rise above that. That's what God
Mm-hmm.
will teach you to. Don't be so quick to react to. Understand that there's going to always be people that's coming at you. The devil is always going to send people that are going to come at you to attack you, to whether it's to attack your character, to attack your what you're doing, kind of minimize what your successes, your
Right. Right.
progresses are.
Right.
But how we respond is so critical, and so that's why I appreciate you bringing that up, because I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
our listeners can benefit. There's somebody that's going to be tuning in that maybe you're not quite the patient one, maybe you're a little hot-headed. It don't
Yeah.
take much to
Right.
set you
Right.
off. Well, you got to be
Yeah.
careful about those traps. Those are the traps that the
Yeah.
enemy will
Yeah.
set for you, because he understands what your weaknesses are. And
Yeah.
if he can exploit that and get you to say or do something that you can't take back, and it ruins you,
Mm-hmm.
then the mission has been accomplished. But if you can rise above that and say, you know what, I know at the end of the day who's on my side, who's got this thing under control.
Right.
So you can say all you want to say to me. You can try to block me in whatever way you can. What God has for me is for me, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
just locked in on that, and I'm just trusting His guidance and His word and His direction. And as long as I follow that, I'm gonna be all right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and if this thing don't work out, it won't be because you prevented it from working it out. It's going to be
Mm-hmm.
because God figured that He wanted to pivot me in a different direction other than where I thought I was supposed to be going. But it won't be because you got me to trip up, to say
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
off the cuff, to get caught up in my feelings and my emotions. And so that's why I'm so
Right.
appreciative
Right.
of you sharing that, because that's
Yeah.
critical for people to understand.
Another byproduct of that though
Hmm.
is in my relationship with my wife. I also came to realize that I had to be very careful how I responded to her.
Mm.
Just the way I did in a professional sense, I had to be very careful how I responded to provoking statements and so forth. Dealing with my wife, I had to also make sure I did the same thing with her, because some things you say to your spouse, you can't take back.
Hmm.
Once they're out there, they're done, because they will never forget it. They're like elephants, man. It's locked in. They'll never
Right.
let you forget it. So so I began to kind of pattern my relationship with my wife in like manner, being very careful how I responded to her when she was going through things.
Hmm.
So I say, if I can survive this stuff in my military world or on a job, I should do much better at home.
Yeah.
But sometimes we forget we learn on the job, and we don't do right things at home. So it's gotta all work together.
Yeah. I mean,
So
excellent point that you brought up. I mean,
hmm
I asked you at the top of the show to let everybody know how long you've been married. It's a reason why
hmm
you've been married for 54 years. You've
yeah.
been able to bridle your tongue. That doesn't mean that you don't
hmm
express your opinion. That doesn't mean that you don't, have conversations and dialogue with your spouse, but you understand that I gotta always be mindful of what, controlling my emotions, not allowing
hmm
words to spew out of my mouth, like you said, that I can't take back. You
right.
know, and so sometimes, again, when I think back, God,
hmm
part of the reason why God allowed you to go through what you went through in the military, yeah, part of
hmm
it was you building that relationship with Him, that bond with Him, you trusting in Him. But there's other side effects to it, like how can I take what the challenges and the skills that I learned here, how can I apply that in my family life, when
Right.
I
Right.
find myself in a combative
hmm
moment, if you will, with that spouse.
hmm
Do I decide that I'm gonna pop off on her because I couldn't pop off on that
Somebody
person
at
who was
work.
trying
Yeah.
to attack me in the workplace?
hmm
Do I make it okay to be that way towards her, but not okay for them? No, no. That lesson that God teaches us, that patience, that love for one another, even for our enemies. I mean, the Bible
mm
speaks of that. I know you don't mean me well, but I still got to love you. I don't have to like what you're doing, but I still
Hmm.
have to love you
Right.
as God
Right.
loves you. I still have to
Right.
show you the respect that God would show you. You know,
Hmm.
you're not going to take me out of my integrity, out of my character, just because you're trying to get a rise out of me. And we even know in marriage that sometimes our spouses try to get a rise out of us. You know,
Absolutely.
so
They want to
you
test
got
us. Yeah.
want to test you. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
just to see how you are you going to just pop off on me, or are you going to still show me respect, even if I'm trying to test you, even if I'm expressing a voicing an opinion or a thought that's
Hmm.
in contrast to how you see it. That still doesn't, that doesn't give you permission to mistreat me. That doesn't give you
Right.
permission to
Right.
talk down to me, you know. So again, God has a very unique way of allowing our life situations to have a rounded out effect in other areas of our life where we
Hmm.
can
Hmm.
benefit from what would appear to be an insurmountable, you know, unable to overcome type challenge. He can not only bless that situation, but he can bless you in other arenas of your
Hmm.
life as
Hmm.
well. So
Right.
I think
Right.
that's a good takeaway for us to learn from that. So good stuff, man. I'm glad
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
you're giving us some good wisdom nuggets to grab hold of here.
Hmm.
So great stuff, man. So
Right.
Ray, I'm curious to know, man. Like when you obviously we've talked about some heavy challenges that you've had to deal with, but
Hmm.
as you know, sometimes the challenges, the storms are heavy. Sometimes they're just maybe minor annoyances or
Hmm.
aggravations that we have to deal with. But nevertheless, whether they're big or small, what I'm curious to know from you is when you find yourself facing adversity or challenging moments in life, what is it that's sort of a best practice for you that you like to do that, when I find myself up against the wall against something, I got to deal with something that's troubling me, moment of adversity, a moment of challenge. These are the things that I like to do that kind of helps me stay focused while I'm
Hmm.
working through whatever that situation is. What works best for you?
Well, like I said before, I learned from hard knocks, if you will, about how prayer worked for me. Because in the military, as I became more senior, I gained more rank and so forth as a naval officer. Sort of the challenges became different, but nonetheless as dangerous because as a senior naval officer, you have to worry about how the people that work for you respond to you, how your people at the same level, the more senior officers, and again, everybody does not mean you good, goodwill. They want to find ways to trip you up, so I had to always, once I figured out what was going on when it came to the power of prayer, that's what I began to rely on all the time. When I got into a sticky situation, I'd go to some private place, reflect on what was going on, pray about it, and then go forth. Because
Mhm.
standing still is not an option. You got to do something, right? If I prayed about it, a course of action, and I feel like I was doing the right thing, boom, I go ahead and run with it and say, Lord, cover me because I'm going forward. And in many cases, it was dealing with somebody, again, another officer who was trying to find a way to slow me down or put some roadblock in my way that I had to kind of work through. And I would admit that at some point I had a bit of an anger issue, and I realized after a few episodes when I just kind of lost control, I'd say things I really didn't want to say because if you say things in anger without control, you don't know what you're saying. The effect of it can be much less gratifying,
Mhm.
or much less successful. So again, I learned from experience that I need to always take a breath, think about how I'm going to respond to something before I say the first thing. Because if you don't do that, chances are you're going to mess it up.
Mhm.
Going to mess it up. So again, as things again as I advanced in my career in the military and then went to work for Lockheed Martin, it was the same thing. When I got in trouble, I had to pray my way out of it,
Mm.
and every single time it worked to my good. So I believe in prayer. you know,
Love that.
and I came about that maybe, I don't know, maybe accidentally under duress, but it always seemed to work out for me. I said, okay, Lord, you got me. Because I'll tell you, when I think about coming from where I came from, working in the fields as a young kid, that was just one step removed from slavery, what I was doing, you know. But to be able to get in go into the military, be able to advance my career, and no one else that I knew had done what I was doing, you know. I said, why me, Lord? And the answer was, why not you?
Mm.
So I kept pursuing as the doors opened, I kept walking through and said, okay, Lord, now I'm in this door. Now what you going to do for me? Show me the way. And that so far that has worked pretty well to maybe able to, it's just sustain my lifestyle for my family. So it's all good. Prayer works.
Love that,
Prayer
man.
works.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But let me say one more thing though, and I
Yeah,
almost
sure.
forgot this.
No, you're good.
The other thing is about giving. I also learned along the way that when I gave of myself to help others, that also provided a positive return to me. And it wasn't always about money. It was just about trying to help somebody else. And in many cases, when I do that, when I've done that, I've been rewarded in some way that I did not expect. It just happened. I said, okay, Lord, those are the seeds it's in the word. I got to follow what you teach us in the word. So,
And I'm glad you brought that up because you just
mm-hmm.
said a moment ago about how, you used to ask the question, to God, why me, Lord? And the
Mm-hmm.
response that you would get back is, why not you? And
Right.
so a lot of times what we don't understand, what we don't realize is that the storms that we're going through,
Mm-hmm.
while there are storms that we're going to go through that are definitely meant for us to grow, to learn from, to become better versions of ourselves
Right.
from,
Right.
there are some storms that every now and then that God will send your way that it's not about you. That
Right.
I'm letting you go through this because I'm positioning you to be able to pour into somebody else who's going to go through a similar situation, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
equipping you to be able to pour into them or to come alongside them based upon your experiences. You're going
Right.
to be equipped to help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that's why I liked when you had pointed that out about how you found not only in addition to prayer, how God had placed it on your heart to just be in the spirit of giving and not
Right.
so much about it
Right.
being about am I going to get a financial gain from it per se. Not to
Mm-hmm.
say that God
Mm-hmm.
won't do that, but that it's
Mm-hmm.
about just again allowing God to use me to be a vessel, tapping into the gifts that He's placed in me, those experiences, those storms that He sent me through, that He
Right.
positioned me to be
Right.
able to come across that person. I don't know who they are. I don't know when I'm going to encounter them. It could be years later that you run into that person that's going
Mm-hmm.
through that situation, and they're going to encounter you, and you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
able to speak to them and relate to them because you've been there and done that. But you're going to be not only you're going to be able to pitch that to them just off of your experience alone, but you're going to be able to
Mm-hmm.
incorporate
Right.
God's presence in how you were able to navigate through that. Something that they needed to hear so that they now know, okay, he's not just this tough guy who just made it through a challenging time. He's saying, no, I'm only tough. I'm only my strength comes through God. My reliance
Right.
upon him,
Right.
my prayers to him. That's what
Mm-hmm.
delivered me through this. That's why I'm able to still be standing here and now
Mm-hmm.
being able to impart the same experience, the same knowledge
Right.
into you. So while
Right.
you're struggling in this moment right now, prayerfully, hopefully, some nuggets of what I say to you, you can now apply that to your situation and you can be delivered too. You can
Absolutely.
experience what that is like. So I'm
Absolutely.
glad you
Yeah.
pointed that out. And
Yeah.
that kind of is
Yeah.
interesting. That kind of takes us into the next question that
Mm-hmm.
I have for you, which is
Mm-hmm.
if you had the opportunity to speak to the younger version of you could speak to young Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about all the experiences, all the challenges that you've had in life, things that you've learned, all of those
Mm-hmm.
hard knocks, as you stated, if you could talk to him, or perhaps somebody that's listening right now, that
Mm-hmm.
they are stuck in that zone, in that moment of, I don't know how to deal with these adversity moments, these challenging moments. I mean, when I
Mm-hmm.
find
Mm-hmm.
in this situation, I panic, I go off, my emotions get the best of me. What would
Hmm.
be your words of inspiration, your words of encouragement that you would have for younger Ray or for somebody that's listening in right now that they don't quite know how to process and navigate in an appropriate way when dealing with
Hmm.
adversity? What would you say to that audience?
I think I would say three key things. I've already talked about prayer. Believe in the power of prayer. Understand it, know how to use it, and believe it's going to work for you. That's the first thing. The other thing is walk in confidence. When I was younger and going through my shy stage and so forth, I think, and you mentioned this also, in that shyness, I did not walk in the confidence that I may appear to walk in now. I just didn't, I was caught up worrying about what I looked like or what people thought of me and all that kind of stuff, and, and, and I think many of us see other people that always seem to be confident and they seem to always be on top of their game because they're walking in confidence, right? People see that, people respond to that. It's a good thing. And I think I would tell my younger self, just be confident, but know that you're confident because you have a backup. The Lord's going to back you up. When I was younger, I didn't understand all that stuff. I didn't understand the power of prayer. I didn't understand that the Lord had my back. I wasn't trained well enough to know that. I had to grow into that over a period of time, right? The third thing is about relationships.
Mm.
When I was younger, I loved having friends, but I wasn't as good about maintaining strong relationships as, say, my wife is. My wife and her family, they have this skill set, man, where people they've met over the years, they still know them, they remember them, they still can hang out with them after years of absence, like they never missed a beat. Coming up in the military, there's a lot of good folks that I met that once I moved on, I moved on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, though, in my latter years, I'm more intentional when it comes to relationships. I'm trying to build those relationships, kind of keep them strong because it helps. It helps to have people you can share things with and just be unabashed, just like all the Bible studies, things we go through at church. And we have some good programs at church that I really, really enjoy. The fellowship is great, but basically it's about relationships and trust. So those are three things: prayer, walk in confidence, and maintain those relationships. Because my wife teases me all the time. When we go down to our hometown and we meet folks that we went to school with, they'll call my name. Hey, Ray Charles, how you doing? And I look at her like, who is this? And she said, that was our classmate, man. You don't remember anybody. As a kid, I wasn't as steeped in that as she was. I regret that now. So yeah, that's important. Yeah.
Very, very good advice, man. I
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
embrace that. I appreciate that. And
Hmm.
definitely something that our listeners can take right away and apply.
Hmm.
Because like I said, that relationship is so important. Relationships, well, of course,
Right.
the ultimate relationship begins with the relationship with God, but
Yeah.
He can open
Absolutely.
you up to be strong
Hmm.
in other relationships.
Right.
But it
Right.
starts with that relationship, and then, like you said, walking in that boldness.
Hmm.
There's going to
Hmm.
be things that God places on your heart, and you might, whether it's a vision, a work that He has for you to do, and it's not unusual in our human condition for us to hear God tell us something. He places something on our hearts, and we're like, how am I supposed to accomplish that? I mean, I don't have the resources. I don't have the intelligence. I don't have
Right.
do you really mean that for me? But
Right.
again, if
Right.
you understand the relationship and you understand that God wouldn't place that on your heart if He didn't, as you stated, have your back. If
Right.
so it's
Right.
one of those things where you have to mature to the point where you say, even if I don't understand it, even if it
Hmm.
doesn't all make sense to me, if I know who the source of it is from, in this case, we're talking about if God is the deliverer of it. Well, last time I checked, His record was flawless. It was undefeated. His
Mm-hmm.
promises are firm, rock solid. So if he's putting this on me, and he's saying, "Hey, just trust and obey and walk in this with boldness, as you stated, and everything
Mm-hmm.
is going to be all right." Then we need to learn to embrace that and just do it. And like you said,
Yeah.
not worried about what other people think, not worried about what I look like. And again,
Mm-hmm.
don't be worried about all the particulars and the details. There's a reason why God doesn't give us all of that up front, because He
Right.
wants you to
Right.
exercise that faith. He wants you to
Right.
exercise that obedience and just trust the process, if you will,
Yeah.
and understand that He's that process that you
Yeah.
trust,
Yeah.
not
You
leaning
know,
into our understanding, but
right.
His. So,
Another thought about that is with our young folk that we're exposed to today. I think it is so important that our young people be exposed to people that have these attributes, that understand about prayer, about walking in boldness, relationships, and so forth, and teach them to do that. I know there are so many of us who come from broken homes
mm-hmm.
where we have a missing link in our upbringing because our dad is missing, a mom is missing, or whatever. And so we don't get that full experience, I guess. So I think parents need to be intentional in making sure their kids are around or surrounded by folks who do have those attributes to show them how they should handle themselves. But we got to do it intentionally.
Yes,
It don't happen by accident. I guess it could happen by accident, but if it's intentional, I think it works out better.
I, I
That's a
totally
thought.
agree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. Totally
Yeah.
agree.
All right.
Well, Ray, man, this has been an awesome experience with you. Like I said, I've known you for over a decade, but I've learned some
Mm-hmm.
more layers of your life and your journey, man. And I'm so thankful that you have taken time out to share that with our viewing audience, with myself. I know I've been blessed. I know my viewers have been blessed, man. So thank you so much for your transparency, your openness and sharing this, because this is some really good stuff that we need to know, we need to embrace, we need to understand.
I
That's going to
appreciate that.
be essential for our success in life, and just
Mm-hmm.
understanding, again, most importantly, understanding the love of God and what being a relationship is all about, and the power of prayer, just reemphasizing that in the midst of it all. So
Mm.
I'm thoroughly glad that we had this opportunity to do so. But before I
Yeah,
let
me
you go,
too. Mm-hmm.
as is customary here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, I want to take an opportunity to celebrate you, to love on you, to acknowledge you. So if you got anything exciting that's going on now or coming up, be it professionally and or personally, that you'd like to share with us, please do so. Because again, we want to acknowledge that, we want to affirm you,
Mm.
lift you up. So what can we look forward to is going on with Ray coming up down the road? What's going on?
Well, as I told you in the past, early this year, I decided to embark on a new endeavor and I open a small business because I am a disabled veteran. So I decided I was encouraged by some friends who I've been hanging out with, talking about business pursuits and so forth. So I decided to open a new business, and I got registered with the federal government, certified through the Small Business Administration. So now I have a service disabled veteran owned small business that enables me to pursue government contracts, city contracts, county contracts, all the above. But what happened with that is it's all about relationships. The person that encouraged me to do this, he and I have been talking about business, sharing ideas. And through this person, I have access to a lot of, several other companies, other businesses, other small businesses that can provide engineering services, IT services, architecture and engineering services, and so forth. My background is really project management. But through my collaboration with these other folks, um, it really boosts my ability to pursue businesses that I could not do otherwise, not on my own. I can go out and now say, okay, hey, this company needs this engineering support. I know where to find that. I can go get that and bring it to the table, and we all eat from the same plate, if you will.
Yes.
And it's all about relationships and so forth. It just so happens that this was been going. It's been building over the last 4, 5, 6 months. A funny thing happened about 3 weeks ago, though, that really blew my mind. I got a phone call from a guy that I had met 5 years prior. I met him at a gas station here locally, close to my home. He saw my golf bags in my back of my car. We began to talk. He said, "Hey, I live in Massachusetts, but I'm here visiting my family. You know, I come back periodically. Let's play some golf when I come back sometime." Okay, sure, let's do that. We changed phone numbers. He called me about 3 weeks ago. It had been 5 years since we'd met. You
Wow.
want to go play golf? I said, "Well, sure, man." So I called my friend that I do business with. We set up a golf date, went to play golf. And through conversation with this guy, we learned that he and his brother have been doing business in a similar manner on the East Coast for some years. And he says, "Well, man, this is crazy. Let's get on the phone with my brother and see how we might collaborate. Get the East Coast, Texas connection." So we did that the next day. Since that time, we've been on the phone every other day or so, sharing ideas about business opportunities that we are now pursuing. I said, "Man, how did that happen?" It's all because, I think, because of sharing information with other folks to help them do some things. And Luke 6:38 says that if people give, it will be given to them in return. The same way, giving of your time, giving of information is sharing, and it's bearing fruit. When I think about it, I said, "My God, how did that happen?" The Lord says, "Hey, I got you.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't lead you to do this stuff without a purpose." And as I explained to you, my purpose really is to get my kids involved in a business. As soon as things really get going the way I want it to, I'll bring all three of my kids into the business in some capacity and let them flow with it. So that's my
Amen.
mission. It's all about my family and getting them set up for the future. So do that.
Wow. That's awesome,
Give
man.
and give and let it be given back to you. That's my mantra.
That's
Give,
awesome.
give, give, and receive, receive, receive in like turn.
Mm.
You know,
Eh,
the Lord's in the blessing business.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And it's so important for people to understand what you just spoke about here because
Mm-hmm.
you've just been doing your business venture idea for the last, like you said, 6 months or so. You're
Mm-hmm.
still in the
Mm-hmm.
early stages of it, but yet you're collaborating with an individual that you met 5 years ago,
Right.
well before you would even start thinking about doing this, who
Mm-hmm.
reaches out to you 3 weeks ago after not talking to him all this time. And it
Right.
just so happens that he's in the same line of work, he and his brother that you're trying to do.
Right.
Now, the world would say, "Oh, that's just lucky." But we
That's
know
not luck.
better. That's not luck. That is
Nothing lucky about that.
that
No.
is God set up divine intervention, if you will. It was already predestined to
Mm-hmm.
take place. You didn't know it, but because
Mm-hmm.
of your spirit of relationships, because this random person out of state saying, "Hey, saw some golf clubs in your car, let's go golfing," you could have had a totally different response. You could have been like,
Right.
"I don't know
Right.
you,
Right.
man, go on somewhere," but
Mm-hmm.
God placed it to receive this welcoming from this stranger.
Right.
This is
Right.
this is a perfect example when we talk about, what a blessings in the streets moment is like. That was what my
Right.
mom used to speak
Right.
about,
Absolutely. Yeah.
encountering what appears to be a random person that you
Mm-hmm.
have no connection with, seems to have come out of the blue, but somehow there's a connection, there's a blessing that is to come from that. Yours was a
Mm-hmm.
little bit delayed. It didn't happen right away, but it was already in the plan. And now here you are collaborating. And even to that, I'm glad you brought that up because it spoke to me, something that I've been pondering upon, and I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
my listeners can embrace this as well. Is
Right.
about the reinforcing this spirit of collaboration and the building of relationships to where,
It
as you
works.
stated, it not only can work, but like I said, everybody can eat. We can all get
Mm-hmm.
fed off of this. We can all benefit. It doesn't have to be a all me. Let me keep all the stuff to myself. Let me, be stingy with it.
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to share that with other
Yeah.
people.
It does require
Boom.
trust. It requires
Yeah, yeah.
trust.
Now, and again,
Yeah.
with the relationship with God, with praying with God, that's where that
Hmm.
discernment comes in, because as you
Right.
stated,
Right.
and we've talked about this, everybody doesn't mean you well, so you can't share your vision, you can't
Hmm.
share,
Hmm. Hmm.
information with just any random person, because everybody doesn't mean you well. There are
Right.
people who are,
Right.
whether they're looking
Right.
to steal what you have in mind, or whether
Hmm.
they're looking to destroy what you have in mind, whether it's talking you out of it, making you feel like it'll never work, or
Hmm.
whatever. Those type of things do happen. So the discernment is necessary. And while God may
Right.
place a certain level of discernment in all of us, ultimately what we take to him in prayer, say, okay, Lord, this person done reached out to me for the first time in like 5 years. Should this just be a regular golf outing, or lead me if I should be engaging in any kind of conversation? And he opened up your heart to do that, and boom, here we
Hmm.
are. You got a connection, and now you got an opportunity, like you said, to build a multi-state relationship from coast to coast, if you will. You don't know where that's going to go, because ultimately, as you shared, the dream is for the kids to be connected to this. So
Right.
even
Right.
if in your lifetime you don't see the blow up moment,
Yeah.
what you always wanted is for them to see it and experience it
Absolutely.
and benefit from
Absolutely.
it, so they can
Yeah.
pass it on and pass it on. So now we got the legacy, we got the
Yeah. Yeah.
generational wealth building, we got all of that in play. You
Right.
can close your eyes knowing that you set that up and be
Yeah.
okay with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So it's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing that you're thinking of, even
Right.
thinking of them in that
Right.
regard. So
Yeah. Let me share one more thing about that that
yes.
just came to mind. Now, my oldest son is a general manager of a branch of a roofing company over in Chesapeake, Virginia. He got to that position because he was an insurance adjuster like I was for a period of time. He learned all about rules and inspections and all that kind of stuff. When he went to work for a roofing company, he blew it up. He was so good at identifying damage and making sales. They made him he kind of catapulted from a sales guy right through a sales manager. Now he's a general manager. Well, it just so happens that through this business, I decided to pursue a roofing contract with a VA medical center down in Temple, Texas. You know, I don't know anything about roofing, not that much, but I think I do know how to talk to people. So I decided, well, let me
Hmm.
pursue this. I started making some phone calls, talking to roofing companies in that area down there, close to that area. And I found one that said, okay, yeah, we're willing to look at this with you. When I look at this company, it turns out they're one of the biggest companies in that area.
Hmm.
They decided to take a shot and go with me to a site visit just because of what I said to them over the phone. So I met with a young project manager. We went through the site visit. We collaborated. He said, well, I think we can do this. Now this guy is fully on board with this program. I submitted the proposal today, and he immediately called me back and said, hey, we want to do more work with you if you can find more roofing contracts. I said, wow,
Hmm.
what did I say to this guy to make him want to do that? I don't know. I don't know, but the Lord somehow intervened to make this connection with this guy, that now his whole company wants to do more work with me and my collaborators. That's how the Lord works, man. I'm so
Yeah.
thrilled how this thing is working. I don't even understand it, how it's going. It
Hmm.
just the way the Lord works. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's a
that's the
beautiful
beauty of
thing.
it. When you
It's
don't
a beautiful
understand
thing.
it, but
Yeah,
it's working anyway, and you're like, man,
yeah,
I'm in amazement. I'm just like,
yeah.
at a loss for words, but I know, if I don't know anything else, I know who's running this. I know who's
Hmm.
navigating the ship here. And it's just a beautiful thing that, if you've never experienced it before, it's one of those
Hmm.
things that, once you experience, it'll be an experience that you'll always want to, repeat over and over and over
Yeah,
again. It's
yeah.
it's kind of
Right.
that's kind of that scenario. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
And so if you understand in truth, what a relationship with God looks like, and how He blesses, how He breaks through and
Hmm.
makes ways,
Yeah.
taking the smallest of things and blowing that thing up into something that you didn't even plan on. He's just like,
Hmm.
I'm just out here just trying to find my way, and then boom. But
Yeah.
but to answer your question about, I don't know how it what was it about that guy? What did he say? It kind of goes back to something that you spoke earlier about your strength in your understanding of relationships, the relationship
Hmm.
building process. I think I think he was more impressed not so much about whether or not you were expert on roofs. Uh, It was your
Because I'm not.
relationship.
Yeah. Hmm.
It was just the way you spoke to him. You gave him a comfort level that made him feel like, I want to give this brother a chance. And then you showed him through your work ethic, hey, I'm not
Hmm.
just talking to talk. Look at what I got to show you. Oh, okay. So now the relationship is there, and you show me the proof in the pudding, so to speak, with the work
Hmm.
ethic. You presented me something of a professional aspect that I can say,
Right.
okay, I
Right.
think I want to collaborate, not just on this, but on projects that don't even exist yet. I want to work with you. So
Hmm.
God has a way of again navigating that thing, intertwining
Hmm.
it, making the connections, giving you the discernment of knowing this is somebody I can trust, that type of thing. So you're not walking into a landmine, a pitfall that you
Right.
don't see
Right.
coming. Again, but God, that works
By
everything
God.
out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
great stuff,
Yeah.
man. Well, I'm excited for you, man. I mean, this is great stuff, and just knowing
Hmm.
the drive, the motivation in what you're doing, man, makes it all that much more special. And you
Right.
can't expect God to do nothing else but bless that. So
So
I'm looking
yeah.
forward to you sharing more stories about that and how it's blowing up and coming along, and how it's going to be a blessing to your legacy, kids and their kids and their kids. So it's an
Hmm.
awesome work, man. So much prayers to you, covering over you and your family and everything that you
I
touch, man.
appreciate that. Hmm.
God's anointing has been all over your life throughout, and He's still working on it. Even in the senior days of life, He's still keeping you strong, keeping you upright, keeping your mind intact. So that's nothing but a blessing, man. So,
Right. Right.
and to my audience, if you've enjoyed, the sharing of our stories this evening, how Ray has just kind of broken it down, and dropped some nuggets of wisdom on you, being transparent and open with his story. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe, please share, please comment, please like, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is all about. We want to inspire, we want
Hmm.
to encourage, being open, being real, being relatable, letting you know that we don't always have it all figured out. We're not perfect. We're not without flaws,
Hmm.
without shortcomings. But one thing that we do understand is the power of God, the power of being in relationship with Him, the power of relying upon Him, the power of prayer, knowing
Amen.
that when we have Him at the head of everything that we do, there's no way that we can go wrong. There's no way we can go
Amen.
astray. And
Right.
so, if I'm speaking to anybody right now that you don't currently have a relationship with God, today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. And I'm sure
Mm.
Ray would co-sign with me in saying it'll be the best decision that you ever make.
Amen.
Um, so with that
Amen.
said,
For sure. Hmm.
absolutely. With that said, I appreciate you all tuning in. And remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts. Thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, you keep fighting that good fight. Be resilient. Be bold in what you do, in your obedience, in your faith in God, leaning on Him, trusting in Him to lead the way.
Mm.
Embrace those stormy moments. They're not there to be negative events in your life. They're opportunities for you to grow, to develop, become better versions of yourself, so God can use you accordingly, so He can tap into those gifts that has been specifically placed in you, so that not only can you be blessed, but you can be a blessing to this world. So with that said, I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in, and you have a great rest of your evening. Check you out next time.
Mm.